Hello, welcome to the Harvey Marge Dialogue Part 2. Before I leave this page, I want you to notice, because it's super critical, we have a whole bunch of paragraphs. In fact, I think there's 9, right? Every time a new person talks, you switch paragraphs. You indent your paragraphs, but good heavens, there's 9 of them, so that the dialogue reads very, 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 very vertically. Okay, I had a fair amount of you not do that when you wrote me your 3 alternate beginnings to your stories. You had the dialogue all in one paragraph. It's so confusing. Okay, remember, remember, remember. So now, on your second page, go over to this little box over here, and let's take a look at a couple of important points. Okay, in fact, circle this nice little first thing here, where it says that the he said, she said is invisible. Don't be afraid of overusing it. He said, she said is the dialogue marker. It almost acts like punctuation. Seriously. Okay, your brain scans over it very, very quickly, and it just says to you, look, here's some dialogue. He said this, she said that. Okay, so don't be afraid of overusing it. Underneath that, it says, judiciously use alternatives to he said, she said. What I'm talking about are things like he replied, he muttered, he moaned, he shrieked. But don't overuse them because they draw too much attention. Okay? You don't want to distract from the actual dialogue by being too creative with that. Remember that nobody cares how many times you have he said, she said. It's got to be there for dialogue. It's invisible, practically. Okay, but if you do something weird like he muttered, it's going to be noticed. Sometimes you want that, but by golly, don't overuse them. That makes sense? Okay, what does it say after that? When you switch speaker, switch paragraphs. Here, put a big asterisk by that. So important. And then, how do you integrate dialogue with narration? How do you make people say things while they're moving? How do you show what their mouths are doing? Okay? So here is a nice example. It's that same dialogue, Harvey and Marge again, but this time it's integrated with a bunch of narration and shows things that are happening. Okay? Again, this is what you're going to want to do so you don't just have a bunch of dialogue and it's static. They're just standing there talking. Okay? So again, we can recognize narration because you have strong past tense verbs. Somebody does something, and it starts out like this. Intent on her knitting, Marge didn't notice her husband standing right in front of her, unread newspaper rolled up in his hand, an accusing glare in his eyes. Notice that the subject of our sentence here was Marge. So this person has made a choice, it was me that wrote it, when Harvey says something, Marge didn't say anything up here, but I'm switching subjects. I'm not talking about Marge anymore. Harvey's going to say something. A lot of contemporary fiction will do that. Okay, not only switching paragraphs when you switch who speaks, but every time you have a new subject, a new point of view, they will switch paragraphs. Contemporary fiction has a lot of little paragraphs. Okay, so now that Harvey's saying something or doing something, we go on to a new paragraph. I wish, Marge, that you would tell me where I put my glasses, said Harvey. Why do we have commas around the Marge? Noun of direct address. Good job, you remembered. Marge's eyes didn't leave her neat rows of knit 1, purl 2, but her whole body stiffened defensively. You left them on the table. No, I did not, Harvey said, shaking the newspaper at her as if to punctuate his words. Now, right there is a key way that you can get action integrated with your dialogue, okay? The key is the word shaking. All right, what is that word? It's a participle. Present participle. Of course, we've tacked on a participle clause. Let's underline it. And since you probably forgot all about those, mark it as a participle phrase. But you see how nice that goes together with a he said, she said. You can tack on some action with those ing clauses. No, I did not, Harvey said, moving across the room. No, I did not, Harvey said, screaming at the top of his lungs. Okay, so don't forget about these nice ing clauses, participle phrases that will add action. Okay, now we just have 2 little tiny paragraphs. Did to, did not, did to. Ha. Finally, Marge looked up in exasperation and tried to stare her husband down. Harvey didn't break eye contact, and he set his face in a stubborn frown. I know I didn't leave my glasses there, Harvey said, the tone of his voice now loud enough to interest the neighbors, because I haven't sat at the table all day today. Okay, there's another thing you can do with dialogue, and that is make some comments about tone of voice. This is actually an absolute, something that he owns, his tone of voice doing something while he's doing something else. You could say something like, Harvey said his brows crinkling. Harvey said with a gravelly voice, nice little adjective clause, and comment on how that thing was said. Okay, so between those two things, tacking on participle phrases, adding some absolutes, and discussing tone, quality of voice, facial expressions, you can get some nice actions intermingled right in there with the dialogue. You had breakfast there, silly, said Marge. I swear your memory's dead and gone. Too bad you can't get memory glasses to fix it. I have not lost my memory, Harvey shouted. And again, we have a nice participle phrase that's going to give him some action, tacked on right to the he said, she said, leaning forward enough that Marge was forced to scooch backwards into the soft cushion of her armchair. Marge collapsed her knitting down like an oriental fan so that the two sharp ends of knitting needles could be used to poke her husband rather sharply in the chest. Well, then I have a question for you, Marge said. Jab, jab. Really nice use of fragments here. What are we arguing about? Jab, jab, jab. Ha ha. Harvey reeled backwards in surprise, his arms flying outward to keep his balance. Nice absolute. I haven't the foggiest idea, he admitted. Oh, there's a nice little thing. That's different from a he said, she said, but not overused. Mostly what we had in the dialogue was he said, she said. And did we notice? Did we care? No, those things are invisible. Okay, we didn't need to have them shriek and mutter and moan and growl. Okay, how many paragraphs did we have? A ton. When you write dialogue, you need to switch speakers every time you switch paragraphs every time you switch speakers. So it's vertical. Ooh, can you do that? Good. Okay, goodbye.